Hey everyone, thanks for clicking on this video. Real quick before we start, if this story sends chills down your spine, smash that like button and subscribe. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I always wonder who's brave enough to watch these stories at 3 a.m. All right, let's get into it. My name is Marcus Chen. I'm 34 years old. I live in a town I can't name, working a job I can't talk about, carrying memories I wish I could forget. 3 years ago, I was honorably discharged from the Air Force with full benefits, a non-disclosure agreement thicker than a phone book, and PTSD that makes it hard to sleep at night. This is the first time I'm breaking my silence. My therapist says it might help. My lawyer says I'm insane. But I need to get this out. I need someone else to know what really happened at Groom Lake on October 23rd, 2018. What they keep in the facility everyone calls Area 51. And why I can never look at the desert night sky the same way again. I joined the Air Force right out of high school, smart kid, good test scores, clean record. They put me through security forces training and assigned me to Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada standard stuff. Gate duty, patrol work, checking IDs. I was good at it, reliable. The kind of airman who follows orders and doesn't ask questions. After 2 years at Nellis, I got tapped for something different. My supervisor pulled me aside one day and said there was an opening for specialized security detail, higher pay, better benefits. But it required an upgraded clearance and a willingness to work at a remote location. I'd have to live on base for weeks at a time, limited communication with the outside world, total confidentiality about my assignment. I said yes, because I was young and stupid and thought it would look good on my resume. The clearance process took 6 months. Background investigators talked to everyone I'd ever known. They went through my finances, my social media, my medical records. They polygraphed me 3 times, asked questions about my loyalty, my drug use, my sexual history. It was invasive and uncomfortable, and made me wonder what kind of job required this level of scrutiny. When I finally got cleared, they flew me to Groom Lake on a Janet Airlines flight. That's the unofficial name for the planes that ferry workers to Area 51, white 737s, with no markings. They leave from a private terminal at McCarran Airport in Las Vegas. No passenger manifests. No flight plans filed with the FAA. You show your badge, you board, you don't ask questions. The flight took 30 minutes. We landed on a runway in the middle of nowhere. Dry lake bed mountains all around. Nothing but desert in every direction. It was beautiful in a harsh, empty way, like being on another planet. A bus took us to the main facility. From the outside, it looked like any military base, hangars, administration buildings, barracks. But there was something different about the place. An energy, a tension. Everyone moved with purpose. Nobody made eye contact. Nobody smiled. My supervisor was a master sergeant named Williams. He was 45, built like a linebacker, with eyes that had seen things he couldn't talk about. He shook my hand and said, "Welcome to Dreamland, Airman Chen. You're going to see things here that will challenge everything you think you know about the world. Your job is simple. Watch. Protect. Stay quiet. Can you do that?" I said yes. He smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. Everyone says yes. Let's see if you mean it. The first week was orientation. They showed us the public areas, the mess hall, the recreation room, the bunks. They briefed us on security protocols, where we could go, where we couldn't go, what we could talk about, what would get us arrested. Area 51 isn't just one base, it's multiple facilities spread across the desert. Some are above ground, some are underground. The levels go deeper than most people realize. And the deeper you go, the stranger things get. I was assigned to Sector 4. That's not the official name. Nothing at Groom Lake has official names. But that's what everyone called it. Sector 4 was the underground portion 12 levels down. Each level more restricted than the last. Each level requiring higher clearance. My clearance got me to level 7. That's where I worked. That's where I spent 18 months of my life watching monitors, checking badges, and trying not to think too hard about what was happening on the levels below me. Level 7 was research and development. At least, that's what they called it. Scientists in white coats. Engineers with tablets. Technicians working with equipment I didn't recognize. Everything was clean, sterile, quiet, except for the hum of ventilation and the occasional beep of electronic equipment. My job was simple. I sat in a security booth at the main access point, checked IDs, monitored cameras, logged everyone who came and went, made sure nobody entered level 8 without proper authorization. It was boring work, mind-numbing, but the pay was good, and I told myself I was serving my country. I worked 12-hour shifts, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. night watch. The facility never slept, but it was quieter at night, fewer people, less activity, just me and the cameras, and the hum of machines doing things I didn't understand. The other guards warned me about the weird stuff. How sometimes you'd hear noises that didn't make sense, see shadows on cameras that moved wrong, feel watched even when you were alone. They said it was just your mind playing tricks. Being underground for too long. The isolation getting to you, I believed them. For a while. The first strange thing I noticed was the screaming. Not human screaming. Something else. It came from level 9. Through the ventilation shafts. High-pitched. Almost mechanical. But with an organic quality that made your skin crawl. It would happen randomly. 2 or 3 times a week. Last for a few minutes, then stop. I asked Williams about it one day. "Sergeant, what's on level 9? He looked at me for a long moment. "Above your clearance, Chen. Don't ask again." I didn't. The second strange thing was the body bags. About once a month, I'd see them bringing body bags up from the lower levels black vinyl. Standard military issue. But they'd bring them through at 3 or 4 in the morning when fewer people were around, rush them onto trucks, drive off into the desert. No paperwork, no questions. I tried not to think about what was in those bags, or why they needed so many. The third strange thing was the smell. Sometimes, when the ventilation was cycling, you'd catch a whiff of something. From below. Chemical. Burning wrong. Like nothing I'd ever smelled before. It made your eyes water. Made you gag. Made you want to leave your post and run up to the surface and breathe clean desert air. But you didn't leave your post, because that was the job. Watch, protect, stay quiet. I could have lived with all of that. The noises, the body bags, the smells. I could have finished my rotation, taken my discharge, and forgotten about the whole thing. But then October 23rd happened, and everything changed. It started at 2:47 hours. I was at my desk, watching monitors, drinking coffee, trying to stay awake. Level 7 was quiet. Only 3 people on shift. 2 scientists in Lab 4 and 1 technician in equipment storage. Normal night. Boring night. Then the alarms started. Not the normal alarms, the emergency alarms, the ones that mean something has gone catastrophically wrong. Red lights flashing, klaxons blaring. The sound so loud, it made your teeth hurt. I grabbed my radio. Security Post 7, requesting sit rep. What's the emergency? Static. Then a voice. Panicked, male. I didn't recognize it. Level 9, containment breach. On Level 9, all units respond. Containment breach. I'd never heard that term before. Didn't know what it meant to it. But the fear in that voice told me everything I needed to know. Something had gotten out. I hit the lockdown button at my station. Blast doors slammed shut across Level 7, sealing us in. Standard protocol for emergencies. Keep each level isolated. Prevent contamination or intrusion. But as I watched my monitors, I realized we weren't keeping something out. We were trying to keep something in. Camera 12. Level 8 corridor. I saw it for the first time. Moving fast. Too fast for how big it was. Human-shaped, but wrong. Tall. Maybe 7 feet. Its skin looked burned, scarred. Like it had been exposed to fire or radiation or something worse. The texture was wrong too. Mottled. Damaged. Healing, but never quite healed. It had no eyes, just smooth skin where eyes should be. But it moved, like it could see. Like it knew exactly where it was going. Its mouth was wrong too. Too wide, too many teeth. When it turned its head toward one of the cameras, I could see its mouth was open. Not like it was trying to bite, more like it was tasting the air, sensing its environment through smell or sound or something else. It wore no clothes, no collar, no restraints. Whatever had been keeping it contained was gone now, and it was free. I watched it move through Level 8, saw it approach a blast door, thought the door would stop it, thought we were safe behind 6 inches of reinforced steel. I was wrong. The thing pressed its hand against the door, and I watched the metal start to bubble, to melt. Not from heat, from something else. Some kind of chemical reaction in its touch. The steel dissolved like wax, and it walked through the hole it had created. It was coming up, while level by level, and we were directly in its path. My radio crackled. William's voice, hard, controlled. All security forces personnel, arm yourselves. Load lethal ammunition. Engage the entity on site. Shoot to kill. Entity, not intruder, not prisoner, entity. The word sent ice through my veins. I opened my weapons locker, grabbed my M4 rifle, loaded a magazine, chambered a round. My hands were shaking. I'd qualified expert on the range, but I'd never actually shot at anything that could shoot back. Never thought I'd have to. The two scientists on level 7 were pounding on my blast door. Dr. Sarah Martinez and Dr. James Foster. I'd checked them in 100 times. Good people. Scared people. Begging me to let them through. I can't, I shouted through the intercom. Lockdown protocol. Nobody moves between levels. Chen, please. Martinez's voice was breaking. That thing is down here with us. It's in the corridor. The camera showed it all. The entity appeared behind them, moving silently, impossibly fast. It grabbed Dr. Foster first. One hand around his throat, lifted him off the ground like he weighed nothing. Foster kicked and struggled and screamed. Then the thing opened its mouth wider, impossibly wide, and bit into Foster's shoulder. Not tearing, not ripping, more like absorbing. The flesh where it bit started to dissolve, to merge with the entity's mouth. Foster's screams became something inhuman. Something I'll hear in my nightmares forever. Martinez ran. Smart woman. Fast woman. But not fast enough. The entity dropped Foster's body and went after her. Caught her at the end of the corridor. I looked away from the monitor. Couldn't watch. But I could hear her screaming through the walls, through the ventilation, through the steel that separated us. Then I stood there with my rifle, watching the blast door, knowing it was coming, knowing that steel wouldn't stop it, knowing I was about to die. I was 24 years old, and I was going to die in a basement in the Nevada desert, and nobody would ever know what happened to me. The door started to melt right in the center, the metal bubbling and running like water. A hole forming, growing, and through that hole, I saw it. That burned, scarred face, that mouth full of too many teeth, that eyeless head turning toward me like it could sense me. It could sense me. I opened fire, emptied my magazine into it. 30 rounds, center mass, headshots, every bullet I had. The impacts made it stagger, made it hiss, but it didn't fall, didn't bleed. The wounds closed almost as fast as I made them. That damaged skin rippling and healing, adapting. I dropped the empty magazine, reached for another. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped it, bent down to pick it up, and that's when I heard it, breathing, right behind me, close enough to feel on my neck. Wet, rag, like lungs that weren't quite lungs anymore. I spun around. It was already past the door, already in my security booth, standing between me and the only exit, looking at me with no eyes but perfect awareness. It opened its mouth, and it spoke. Not words, not language, but sound that somehow formed meaning in my brain, like it was bassing my ears and going straight into my thoughts. Wrong. This is wrong. I should not be here. You should not be here. None of this should be. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. couldn't do anything but stand there and wait for it to kill me. It took a step closer, leaned down, its face inches from mine, that mouth opening wider, and I could see inside, could see that it wasn't just a mouth, it was more like a portal, a void, deeper than should be possible, in something with a physical form. I am sorry, the meaning formed in my head. I am so sorry for what they did to me, for what I have become, for what I must do. Then something happened. Gunfire, real gunfire. From behind the entity, a team of security forces had breached through another access point. Heavy weapons, automatic fire. The entity turned toward them, shrieked that mechanical organic sound I had heard so many times before. Chen, move! Williams was there, grabbing my shoulder, pulling me backward, through a service corridor I didn't know existed. The entity was between us and the team, fighting them, killing them, but buying us seconds to run. We ran through tunnels, through passages I'd never seen on any map. Williams knew exactly where he was going. Had done this before. Practiced this. The base had escape routes nobody talked about. Behind us, the screaming continued. Human and not human mixing together, the sound of heavy weapons explosions. Someone had deployed grenades, maybe rockets, trying to bring down the entire level to stop that thing. We emerged on level 4, the surface levels. Williams pushed me into an elevator, hit the button for ground level. As the doors closed, I saw it again on a monitor. The entity, moving through a group of soldiers like they were nothing, leaving bodies, leaving parts of bodies, moving toward the surface, moving toward freedom. The elevator reached ground level. Williams pulled me out. We ran through the facility, alarms everywhere, personnel evacuating trucks moving, helicopters spinning up, the whole base going into emergency protocols. Get to the tarmac, Williams shouted. Get on any aircraft that will take you. Get as far from here as possible. What about you? I'm staying. Someone has to. Someone has to try to stop it. Sergeant, you can't... Go, Chen. That's an order. I went, ran to the tarmac, jumped on the first helicopter I saw. It lifted off before the doors were even closed. I looked down at the facility, saw people running, saw vehicles racing away, saw fire and smoke coming from the underground entrances. And I saw it, standing on the surface for the first time, the entity, looking up at the helicopters, at the stars, at a world it had been locked away from. Then it started walking, north, toward the open desert, toward nothing and everything, moving with purpose, like it knew where it was going, like it had a destination. The helicopter banked, and we lost sight of it. But I knew. Everyone on that aircraft knew something had escaped from Area 51. Something they'd kept locked up for God knows how long. Something that wasn't quite alive, and wasn't quite dead, and definitely wasn't supposed to exist. And now it was free. They flew us to Nellis Air Force Base, emergency landing, medical triage. We were herded into a secure building and separated. No phones, no communication with the outside world. Men in suits appeared within the hour. Not military, not Air Force, intelligence community. The kind that makes people disappear. I was put in a room by myself. White walls, metal table, 2 chairs, 1 door, with no handle on the inside. I sat there for 6 hours before anyone came to talk to me. No food, no water. Just me and my thoughts and the image of that thing biting into Dr. Foster, burned into my brain. When the door finally opened, two people entered. A man in his 50s with gray hair and the kind of face that never smiled. A woman in her 30s with a tablet and cold eyes. They sat across from me. The man introduced himself as Mr. Davidson. The woman didn't introduce herself at all. Senior Airman Chen, Davidson began. You've experienced something tonight that approximately 47 people on Earth know about. That number is classified. Your knowledge of the entity is classified. Your presence at Groom Lake is classified. Everything that happened tonight is so far above top secret that we don't even have a classification level for it. What was that thing? I asked. My voice was hoarse. I'd been screaming during the helicopter ride without realizing it. That's classified. Where did it come from? Classified. How many people did it kill? Davidson's expression didn't change. 17 confirmed. 8 more injured. 2 missing. All classified. How do you classify people being dead? Very carefully. He leaned forward. Here's what happens now. You're going to sign documents acknowledging that you witnessed a catastrophic equipment failure that resulted in a toxic chemical leak. You'll agree that you suffered minor injuries during the evacuation. You'll accept an honorable discharge with full benefits and a medical diagnosis of acute stress reaction. You'll never speak about what you really saw, not to family, not to friends, not to therapists, not to anyone, ever. And if I refuse? The woman spoke for the first time. Her voice was flat, empty. Then you'll be charged under the Espionage Act, held in solitary confinement during your trial, convicted by a secret court sentenced to life in a federal supermax prison. Your family will be told you committed suicide. There will be a funeral, an empty casket. You'll cease to exist in every meaningful way. I stared at her. She stared back. No emotion. No hesitation. She'd done this before. She'd make good on the threat. I signed the papers. They kept me at Nellis for 2 more weeks. Debriefings, medical evaluations, psychological assessments, making sure I wasn't going to crack under the pressure of keeping the secret. Other survivors from that night were there too. I saw them in the halls. We didn't talk. We weren't allowed to. But I could see it in their eyes. The same trauma, the same knowledge, the same fear. Williams wasn't among them. I asked about him. Nobody would answer. But I saw his name on a casualty list that someone accidentally left visible for 3 seconds. KIA, killed in action. He'd stayed behind, tried to stop it. He'd failed. 17 people dead. And they just disappeared from all records. No obituaries, no funerals. Their families were told lies. Equipment malfunction, training accident, natural causes. Anything but the truth. On my last day at Nellis, Davidson came back, alone this time. He sat across from me and slid a folder across the table. You're being discharged tomorrow. You'll receive your D-214, your benefits, your medical documentation. You'll disappear into civilian life and hopefully never think about October 23rd again. He paused. But I'm going to tell you something off the record. Something that's going to make your nightmares worse. Are you sure you want to know? I should have said no. Should have walked away. But I needed to understand. Tell me. The entity, what you saw. That's not what it was originally. That's what it became. Through years of experimentation, testing, pushing the boundaries of biology and physics and things that have no name. He opened the folder. Inside was a photograph, black and white, grainy, taken decades ago. It showed a man, young, maybe 20, military uniform, Korean War era. He was smiling. Normal, human, alive. His name was Thomas Reeve, Army private. He disappeared during the Korean War in 1952. Listed as MIA. His family mourned him, moved on. But he didn't die in Korea. He was taken. By people experimenting with things they didn't understand. Things related to energy consciousness. The space between life and death. Davidson closed the folder. They tried to make him into a weapon. A perfect soldier. Something that couldn't be killed, couldn't be stopped. They succeeded. But the cost was his humanity, his sanity, his soul. What walks the desert now isn't Thomas Reeve anymore. It's what's left after 70 years of torture dressed up as science. I felt sick. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand what you're keeping silent about. Not a monster. A victim. A man who is broken and reshaped into something terrible. And we're the ones who did it. The United States government. In pursuit of weapons we thought would keep us safe. Where is it now? The entity? We don't know. It disappeared into the desert. We had search teams, drones, satellites. Nothing. It's out there somewhere. Probably still heading north. Toward what? We can't say. But Chen, here's the thing that keeps me up at night. It spoke to you. It said words. After 70 years of silence, it chose to communicate. What did it say? I remembered. Those thoughts forced into my brain. It said it was sorry, that this is all wrong, that none of this should be. Davidson nodded slowly. That's the first coherent communication it's had since 1968, 50 years of silence. And it breaks it to apologize. Think about that. Think about what kind of mind is trapped in that body. He stood to leave, paused at the door. One more thing. You're not the first person to see it escape. This happened once before. 1987. Different guard. Different breach. They caught it that time. Brought it back, locked it deeper, made the containment stronger. But now, it's out again. And I don't think we're getting it back this time. I think Thomas Reeve is finally free. And God help anyone who gets in his way. After I was discharged, I moved to Arizona. Got a job in security at a casino. Tried to build a normal life. It didn't work. The nightmares came every night. That burned face. That impossible mouth. The sound of Dr. Martinez screaming. The feeling of its breath on my neck. I started drinking. Lost my job, lost my apartment. Spent 6 months living in my car, parked in the desert, staring at the stars, and wondering if that thing was out there somewhere doing the same. Eventually, I got help. Via hospital, medication, therapy, slowly crawled back to something resembling stability. Got a new job, new place. Started over, but the knowledge never left. the weight of that secret crushing down on me every day. I tried to forget, tried to move on, but then the news started changing. Stories that caught my attention. That made the hair on my neck stand up. December 2018. 2 months after the incident. Hikers disappeared in Death Valley National Park. 3 people, experienced hikers. They went in and never came out. Search and rescue found their campsite. Everything was there. Food, water equipment, but no people. Like they'd vanished into thin air. January 2019. A ranch in rural Nevada reported livestock missing. 12 cattle gone overnight. No tracks, no blood, no signs of predators. The rancher said he heard something moving through his property, in the dark. Something big. Something that breathed wrong. March 2019. A truck driver on Highway 95 called 911. Said he'd seen something standing in the road. Tall? Too tall. Didn't move when he hit the high beams. Just stood there looking at him, looking through him. He swerved. Crashed into a ditch. When rescue arrived, he was hysterical. Kept saying it had no eyes, but it could see him. Could see into him. I collected the stories, documented them, used anonymous accounts and encrypted connections, traced a path. North from Groom Lake, through Death Valley, through rural Nevada, through the desert wilderness. A trail of disappearances and strange sightings, all following the same direction. I wasn't the only one tracking it. I found others online. People using coded language to discuss anomalous events in the Nevada desert. Some were former military. Some were civilians who'd seen things they couldn't explain. All of us dancing around the truth we couldn't speak directly. One user reached out to me, handle Desert Ghost 87. Their message was simple. You were at Dreamland on October 23rd. So was I. We need to talk. We met in person. A diner in Tonopah, middle of nowhere. He was older than me, 45. Former Army. He'd been part of the recovery team sent after the 1987 escape. His name was Michael Torres. He'd been carrying the secret for 30 years. It's still out there, he said over coffee. His hands shook. It never stopped moving. Never stopped walking. I've been tracking it for 3 decades. Every disappearance, every sighting, every anomaly. It's all connected. Where is it going? North. Always north. I don't know why, but it has a destination, a purpose. And when it gets there, something's going to happen. Something that makes the breach at Groom Lake look like a minor incident. He showed me his research maps, covered in pins. News clippings, police reports, satellite imagery. The pattern was undeniable. Something was moving through the American Southwest, leaving a trail of missing people and traumatized witnesses. Why hasn't the government stopped it? I asked. They've tried. Twice. Special ops teams, heavy weapons. Both times, the entity killed or disabled the entire team. And here's the thing that terrifies me. It's getting smarter. Learning. The way it moves now, the way it avoids detection, it's not the confused, escaped prisoner anymore. It's evolved, adapted, become something more dangerous. What do we do? Torres looked at me with haunted eyes. We warn people. We can't say what it is or where it came from, but we can mark the areas it's been. Help people avoid the danger zones. Maybe save a few lives. We worked together for the next year, documenting incidents, mapping movements, creating an unofficial database of entity activity. Always careful, always anonymous, always aware that if the government found out, we'd disappear. But in September 2020, Torres vanished. His apartment was cleaned out. His computer was wiped. His phone disconnected. No forwarding information. No goodbye. Just gone. I know what that means. They found him, and they silenced him. Permanently. I went dark after that. Deleted my accounts. Destroyed my research. Moved to a new city with a new identity. Tried to forget. Tried to live. But the news kept coming. October 2020. A small town in Idaho. Population 300. Everyone evacuated. In the middle of the night. Official story, gas leak. But I saw the satellite images before they were scrubbed. Saw the damage to buildings. Saw the paths through the town. Saw evidence of something massive moving through. The town is still abandoned, fenced off. Nobody's allowed back. April 2021. A forest fire in Oregon. Started spontaneously. No lightning, no human cause. Burned 10,000 acres. But fire investigators found something in the burn zone. Tracks, enormous, humanoid. Going in a straight line through the destruction. Like the fire didn't touch whatever made them. November 2021. Military convoy attacked on a remote highway in Washington state. 3 vehicles, 12 soldiers. Ambushed by unknown hostile force. All personnel killed. The convoy was transporting something. Something classified. Something they thought was important enough to risk moving through entity territory. The entity took it, whatever it was, and kept moving north. 3 months ago, I got a package, no return address. Inside was a thumb drive and a note in Torres's handwriting. Marcus, if you're reading this, I'm dead or worse. The entity is heading for the Canadian border. There's something there. Something old. Something buried. The government knows, but they're not stopping it. They're studying it, watching to see what happens. We're not the good guys in this story. We never were. The drive has everything I know. Make it public. Make people understand. It's our only chance. I plugged in the drive. It had files. Thousands of them. Documents from the 1950s. Project files. Experiment logs. Photographs of Thomas Reeve before, during, after the systematic destruction of a human being in the name of science. And it had coordinates. A location in northern Washington near the Canadian border. That's where it was heading. That's where it had always been heading. The drive also had a video file, dated October 15th, 2021. It showed Torres standing in front of the camera. He looked thin, sick, afraid. Marcus, they're going to kill me for this. For keeping records, for trying to warn people. But someone has to. That thing in the desert, it's not a monster. It's a man who was tortured until his body gave up on being human. And he's going home, back to where they first took him, back to where this all started. There's a facility there, older than Groom Lake, deeper, more secret. That's where Project Lazarus began. And if Reeve reaches it, if he gets inside, I don't know what will happen, but I know it won't be good. The video ended. I sat staring at the screen for an hour, processing, deciding, and I realized I had no choice. I had to make this public, had to warn people, even if it meant breaking my NDA, even if it meant the government coming for me, even if it meant my life was over. Because Thomas Reeve deserved to have his story told. The victims deserved to be remembered. And the people in that entity's path deserved to know what was coming. So I'm telling you, all of you, this is real. This is happening, and it's not over. If you live in the Pacific Northwest, if you're anywhere near the Canadian border, pay attention. If you see something tall and burned walking through the desert or the forest, if you hear breathing, that sounds wrong. If you feel watched by something with no eyes, don't investigate. Don't approach. Just run. Get as far away as possible and don't look back. Because Thomas Reeve is still walking, still heading north, still moving toward whatever destination calls to him. And God help anyone who gets in his way. After I decided to go public with Torres's files, something happened that changed everything. I was being followed. Black SUVs parking on my street, the same faces appearing wherever I went. My internet suddenly getting slower. Clicks on my phone calls. They knew I had the drive. They knew what I was planning, and they were deciding what to do about me. I had maybe 48 hours before they moved, before I disappeared like Torres. So, I made a choice. Instead of publishing the files online, where they could be scrubbed and denied, I would go there, to the coordinates Torres had given me, to the facility where it all started, document everything, live stream it if I could, make it impossible to cover up. It was stupid, suicidal, but I'd spent 3 years carrying this weight, 3 years with nightmares and guilt, and the knowledge that 17 people had died while I'd survived. I needed closure, or I needed to die trying. I packed a bag, camping gear, food, water, a gun I had bought legally, and hoped I wouldn't need, and the thumb drive, always the thumb drive. My insurance, my evidence, my purpose. I drove north, took back roads, avoided highways where license plate readers could track me, paid cash for everything, kept my phone off, became a ghost moving through the American West. The coordinates led to a stretch of wilderness in northern Washington Cascade Mountains, dense forest, no towns for miles. The kind of place where people go to disappear, where bodies are never found. It took me 2 days to reach the area. I parked my car 10 miles from the coordinates and hiked in. The forest was beautiful. Ancient trees, mountain streams, wildlife. Peaceful. It should have felt safe. It didn't. As I got closer, I started noticing things. Dead trees, not old dead, newly dead, like something had sucked the life out of them. The bark was gray, brittle, the branches bare, even though it was only October. And there were no animals, no birds, no insects, just silence. The coordinates led to a depression in the forest floor. Like a sinkhole, 40 feet across, perfectly circular. At the bottom was concrete, old concrete, cracked, overgrown. And in the center, a metal hatch, rusted but intact. I stood at the edge of that hole for 10 minutes. Every instinct screaming at me to turn around, to run, to forget I'd ever come here. But I'd come too far, carried this burden too long. I climbed down. The concrete was slick with moss. The hatch had a wheel lock. It was rusted solid. I tried to turn it. Nothing. I was about to give up when I noticed something. Scratches around the wheel. Fresh scratches. Something had opened this recently. Something strong enough to turn a wheel that decades of rust had frozen in place. Thomas Reeve had been here. He'd beaten me to it. The wheel suddenly moved. Not from me, from below. Someone was opening it from the inside. I stepped back, drew my gun, aimed at the hatch, waited, my heart hammering, my hands sweating. The wheel kept turning. The hatch lifted. A crack of darkness appeared, growing wider, and then a voice, human, female, terrified. Please help me. Please, it's down here. It won't let us leave. I approached carefully, gun ready, looked through the opening, saw a ladder going down, saw lights below, emergency lights, red, flickering. Who are you? I called down. Dr. Emma Wright, biologist. Please, we need help. It's killing us. Every instinct said trap, said run. But I heard the desperation in her voice, heard the fear, and I made my choice. I went down. The ladder descended 30 feet into a corridor, military construction, old, maybe 1950s era. Concrete walls, steel doors, everything corroded and failing. The emergency lights cast everything in red shadow. Dr. Wright was waiting at the bottom. 40 years old, lab coat torn, face bruised, unterrified eyes. She grabbed my arm the moment I reached the floor. Thank God. Thank God someone came. We thought we were going to die down here. What is this place? Project Lazarus, the original facility. Before they moved everything to Groom Lake. We were sent here 2 weeks ago to catalog what was left. Historical documentation, making sure no sensitive material remained. But then it showed up, the entity. It came back, and it won't let us leave. How many of you are there? 3, myself, Dr. Patterson, and Agent Morrison from DOE Security. Patterson's hurt. Morrison's trying to keep it away from us, but I don't know how much longer he can hold out. Where is it now? Level 2. There are 3 levels. We're on level 1. It's been systematically moving through the facility, like it's looking for something, or remembering something. This was where they kept it, where they did the experiments. It's been 70 years, but it remembers. She led me through the corridor. The walls were lined with old equipment, consoles, monitors, all dead, all abandoned decades ago. We passed rooms with viewing windows. I looked in. saw examination tables, restraints, medical equipment, torture equipment, all of it crusted with age and rust. And on the walls, scratches, deep gouges in the concrete, like something had clawed at them for years, trying to escape, trying to end the pain. "How did you survive 2 weeks?" I asked. "We've been hiding, moving between levels. It's smart, but it's also hesitant, like it doesn't want to hurt us, like it's fighting itself. Sometimes we see it just standing in corridors, not moving, like it's processing, remembering. Other times it hunts us, chases us. We've learned to stay quiet, stay hidden. Wait for it to move to another level." We reached a security door. Wright opened it with a key card. On the other side was what looked like a command center. Banks of monitors. Communication equipment. Most of it dead. But some was still active, running on emergency power. 2 people were there. A man in his 50s lying on a cot with his leg bandaged, Dr. Patterson, and a younger man in tactical gear holding an MP5. Agent Morrison raised his weapon when I entered. Wright quickly intervened. "He's civilian. Came down to help." "Civilian?" Morrison looked at me like I was insane. "You just walked into this voluntarily?" "I was at Groom Lake, October 23rd, 2018. I saw what this thing is, what it can do. And I'm here because someone needs to document this. Someone needs to tell the truth." Morrison lowered his weapon. "You're the guard from Sector 4. Chen, I read your file. You're DOE, Department of Energy? That's the cover. I'm actually CIA, Special Activities. We handle facilities like this. Make sure nothing escapes. Clean up when things go wrong." He gestured to the room. "This is as wrong as it gets." Patterson spoke from his cot. His voice was weak, pained. "The entity. It's Thomas Reeve. We know, because we found his file, his original file, from 1952. They brought him here after Korea, experimented on him, tried to create a super soldier, failed catastrophically, turned him into what he is now. He's been trying to communicate," Wright added. "Sometimes he stands outside whatever room we're hiding in, and we hear him. Not words, more like broadcasting emotion, sadness, rage, confusion, loneliness. 70 years of loneliness. Can you imagine? I remembered that moment in my security booth, when it had spoken into my mind. I am sorry. I am so sorry." "What's he looking for down here?" I asked. Morrison pulled up a map on one of the working monitors. "The facility has 3 levels. Level 1 is administration and observation. Level 2 is research and testing. Level 3 is..." He paused. "Level 3 is where they kept the original test subjects. Before Reeve, the ones that didn't survive the process. Their remains are still down there, preserved, stored. Reeve's been systematically opening every storage unit, like he's looking for something. Or someone," Wright said quietly. "We found records. Reeve wasn't alone when they took him. There were 5 soldiers captured in Korea, 5 men who disappeared. Only one file survived the purge, a name. Sarah Reeve, Thomas's sister. She was a nurse. Also taken. Also experimented on. She died in 1954, but her body was never returned to the family. It's down there, level 3. The pieces clicked. He's not here to destroy the facility. He's here to recover his sister, to take her home. Morrison nodded. That's our theory. And when he finds her, when he has what he came for, maybe he'll leave. Maybe he'll finally be at peace. Or maybe he'll burn this whole facility to the ground with us inside it. We have to help him, I said. Show him where she is. Let him take her and go. Are you insane? Morrison stared at me. That thing has killed 23 people that we know of. It's not human anymore. It's a weapon, a mistake, something that should have been destroyed decades ago. It's a victim, I countered. A man who was tortured and broken. He deserves peace. His sister deserves a proper burial. We can give them that. By doing what? Walking up to it and asking nicely? It'll kill you the moment you get close. Maybe. Or maybe it will listen. Because it spoke to me once. It apologized. And things that feel sorry can feel other things too. Like gratitude. Like hope. Wright looked at Patterson. He nodded weakly. She turned to Morrison. I think Chen's right. We can't fight it. We can't contain it. But maybe we can reach it. Give it what it came for. End this peacefully. Morrison was silent for a long moment. Then he sighed. I'm going to regret this. But fine. We go to level 3. We find Sarah Reeves' remains. And we hope to God that Thomas understands what we're trying to do. We descended through the facility. Each level was worse than the last. Level 2 was where they'd conducted the experiments. The rooms were nightmare fuel isolation chambers, radiation exposure suits, surgical theaters with restraints built into the tables, and everywhere, evidence of what they'd done, blood stains that wouldn't wash away, scratch marks in the walls, names carved into concrete by people who knew they were going to die. They tried to fuse human consciousness with resilient biological material, Wright explained, as we walked. The theory was that if you could make a human body regenerate from any damage, that soldier would be unstoppable. But human consciousness isn't designed to exist in a body that won't die. The subjects went mad, violent, or they withdrew so far into themselves they became catatonic. Thomas Reeve was the only one who maintained any awareness, any sense of self. That's why they kept experimenting on him, because he wouldn't break completely. That's worse, I said, much being aware of what they did to you, being trapped in a body that won't die, no matter how much you want it to, for 70 years. We reached level 3, the deepest level. The coldest, the storage level. Rows of metal lockers, each one labeled with a number. No names, just numbers. But Wright had the manifest. Had the key to finding Sarah Reeve, locker 47, she said. That's her. We approached it slowly. The locker was old, sealed. But the lock had been broken. Recently, Thomas had been here, had found her, had opened the locker. But he was gone now, had taken what he came for. Except he hadn't. Because when Wright opened the door fully, Sarah Reeve was still inside. Her body preserved in some kind of stasis field, still wearing her nurse's uniform. still looking like she'd just fallen asleep 70 years ago. He couldn't take her, Patterson said. He'd insisted on coming despite his injury. Look at the containment field. It's still active. He couldn't break through it without destroying her body, so he left her here. And he's trying to figure out how to shut it down. Where is he now? I asked. Morrison pointed to the ceiling. Above us. He's in the power room, trying to cut the power to the containment field. If he succeeds, the whole facility goes dark, including life support. We'll have about 30 minutes of air before we suffocate. Then we need to help him before he kills us all. We climbed back to level 2, found the power room. The door was torn open. Inside, surrounded by exposed wires and failing equipment, was Thomas Reeve, the entity, the weapon, the victim. He was pulling at cables, ripping out junction boxes, trying to force the system to shut down, trying to free his sister, and failing, because he didn't understand the technology, didn't know which systems to disable. He was just destroying everything in frustration. I stepped into the room. Morrison tried to stay me. I shook him off, walked toward the entity, toward Thomas Reeve, unarmed, unprotected, trusting that somewhere in that burned, broken body was still a human being who could understand Thomas, I said quietly. He stopped, turned toward me, that eyeless face tilting, that impossible mouth slightly open, tasting the air, sensing me. Thomas Reeve, you came back for Sarah, your sister. We know where she is. We can help you. But you need to stop. Let us shut down the power correctly. Let us free her without killing everyone. For a moment, nothing happened. Then emotions flooded into my mind. Not words, pure feeling. Hope, fear, desperation, grief. 70 years of grief for a sister he couldn't save, couldn't bury, couldn't let rest. Yes, I said. We can help, if you let us. Thomas Reeve stepped back from the power systems, waiting, watching, trusting. It was the most human thing I'd seen him do. Morrison and Wright moved to the controls, started shutting down systems properly. Patterson leaned against me, whispering, I can't believe that worked. Neither can I admitted 10 minutes later. The containment field around Locker 47 failed. Sarah Reeve's body was free. Thomas descended to level 3. We followed at a distance, watched as he approached the locker, as he reached in with those burned, scarred hands. As he lifted his sister's body with impossible gentleness, he turned to us. And again, emotions broadcast. Gratitude, sadness, and something else, peace. Finally, after 70 years, peace. He carried her up the ladder up to the surface, into the forest where sunlight filtered through the trees. We followed, watched as he laid her down on the moss, watched as he knelt beside her. And then something impossible happened. His body started to break down, not dying, releasing. The burned skin began to flake away, the damaged tissue dissolving. The impossible biology finally giving up its hold on whatever remained of Thomas Reeve. Within minutes, 2 bodies lay on the forest floor. Thomas and Sarah Reeve, brother and sister, finally reunited, finally at rest. The facility's self-destruct triggered shortly after Morrison had activated it before we left, destroying all evidence, burying all secrets. As we hiked back to civilization, we heard the explosions, watched the smoke rise above the trees. Another chapter of Project Lazarus erased, but this time with witnesses, with documentation, with truth. The government came for us 3 days later. Not with violence, not with threats, but with lawyers and paperwork and carefully worded agreements. They knew we'd witnessed the end, knew we had documentation, knew we could tell the world what really happened to Thomas and Sarah Reeve. But they also knew we were exhausted, traumatized, and smart enough to understand that some battles can't be won. Agent Morrison was recalled to Langley. Dr. Wright and Dr. Patterson were reassigned to classified projects I'll never know about. And I was offered a deal: generous compensation, new identity, complete medical coverage, including therapy. All I had to do was sign new NDAs and never speak about what happened. I agreed. But I kept copies, encrypted, distributed, insurance that would go public if I disappeared. They knew I had them. I knew they knew. It was a Cold War in miniature, mutually assured destruction on a personal scale. That was 3 years ago. Since then, I've tried to live normally. New name, new city, new job that has nothing to do with security or the military. I got married last year. My wife doesn't know about my past, doesn't know about the nightmares that still wake me up sometimes, doesn't know. I once stood face to face with something that should never have existed. But she knows something happened, can see it in my eyes when certain topics come up. She's patient, understanding, waiting for the day when I'm ready to tell her. Maybe someday I will. Maybe someday I'll trust that the world has changed enough to handle the truth. Because the world is changing. Information spreads faster now. Secrets are harder to keep. Classified files leak. Whistleblowers come forward. The government's ability to control the narrative is weakening. And I'm not the only one with a story anymore. Over the past 3 years, I've connected with others. People who worked at facilities I'd never heard of. People who witnessed things that challenged their understanding of reality. Security guards, scientists, military personnel, all of us carrying secrets, all of us watching for the right moment to speak. We've formed a network. Encrypted communications, dead drops, anonymous sharing, building a database of incidents the government doesn't want public. Not to cause panic, not to destroy national security, but to push for accountability, for transparency, for an end to experiments that create victims, like Thomas Reeve. 6 months ago, a document leaked, heavily redacted, but enough was visible to confirm something I'd suspected. Project Lazarus wasn't the only program of its kind. There were others. Project Blue Book, Project Montauk, Project Crossroads, all exploring the boundaries of human biology, all creating things that should never exist. Some of those projects are still active, still running, still experimenting, and every day they operate is another day. We risk creating another Thomas Reeve, another broken human being transformed into a weapon. Another victim who will eventually escape and have to walk alone through the desert, trying to remember what it felt like to be whole. The leaked document included a name I recognized: Dr. Sarah Martinez, the scientist who died when Thomas Reeve escaped from Groom Lake. According to the document, she wasn't just a victim. She was one of the lead researchers on Project Lazarus. She'd spent 15 years studying Thomas Reeve, testing him, pushing the boundaries of what his altered biology could withstand. She died screaming, killed by the thing she'd helped create. I don't know if that's justice or irony, or just the cruel mathematics of karma. But I think about her sometimes. Wonder if in her last moments she understood what she'd done, if she felt remorse, if she whispered an apology that nobody heard last month. I received a package, hand-delivered, left on my doorstep with no note. Inside was a thumb drive. I knew what it was before I plugged it in. More files, more evidence, more secrets someone thought I should know. The drive contained footage from Groom Lake, from the night Thomas Reeve escaped, multiple camera angles, the entire event from start to finish, including footage I'd never seen, footage from levels I didn't have access to, footage showing what happened after I evacuated. I watched Thomas Reeve move through the facility, watched him kill people, but not randomly, not mindlessly. He was selective, targeting specific individuals, the researchers, the scientists, the people who'd hurt him. He let the guards pass, let the maintenance workers flee. He was capable of distinguishing between those responsible for his suffering and those who were just doing their jobs. That level of awareness, that capacity for judgment, it proved something I'd always believed. Thomas Reeve wasn't a monster. He was a man who'd been given impossible power and 70 years of rage. And he used that power to achieve very specific goals: escape, revenge, reunion with his sister, and finally, release. The footage also showed something else. In the moments before he broke containment, before he began his escape, Thomas Reeve had been calm, docile, cooperating with his handlers. And then someone made a mistake. A new researcher, young, inexperienced. He'd made a comment, just a thoughtless remark about how much longer they'd keep testing the monster. The monster. That word. That single word triggered everything. Thomas Reeve's containment field had flickered, just for a second. But that second was enough. He'd been waiting, planning, preparing for 70 years. And when that opportunity came, he took it. So really, the escape wasn't a security failure, it was a choice. Thomas Reeve had chosen his moment, chosen his path, chosen freedom over continued existence as a research subject. And I can't blame him for that choice. The footage ends with him reaching the surface, standing under the stars for the first time since 1952. And I swear, even through that burned eyeless face, I could see something like wonder. Like he'd forgotten the world was this big, this beautiful, this worth fighting for. Whoever sent me this footage wanted me to see that moment, wanted me to understand that Thomas Reeve died free, died human, died holding his sister. That's a better ending than most people get. Certainly better than he had any right to expect after 70 years in hell. But the footage also contained something else. A file, encrypted but with a password I recognized. Torres's birthday. He'd compiled this. Before they got him, before he disappeared. This was his final message. Inside was a list. 23 names, people who were currently being held in facilities across the United States, people who'd been subjected to experiments, people who'd been transformed into things they shouldn't be, people like Thomas Reeve, who were still trapped, still suffering, still waiting for someone to care enough to free them. 23 people, 23 victims, 23 potential catastrophes waiting to happen. Because eventually they'll all escape, or they'll die in custody. And either way, the government will cover it up. We'll classify it. We'll make sure nobody knows what happened. Unless someone speaks out. Unless someone forces the truth into the light. Unless someone decides that accountability matters more than job security. I'm making that decision. Now, I'm publishing this story, sharing Torres's list, breaking every NDA I've signed and accepting the consequences. Because 23 people are still suffering what Thomas Reeve suffered. And I can't live with that knowledge and stay silent. The government will come for me, I know that. They'll claim I'm lying, fabricating, seeking attention. They'll dig through my history, find my mistakes, my weaknesses. They'll discredit me before most people even read this. That's how cover-ups work. But they can't silence everyone. They can't erase everything. And every time they try, more people will question. More people will investigate. More people will demand answers. Change happens slowly, incrementally, one whistleblower at a time, one leaked document at a time, one story at a time. This is my story, my contribution to that slow march toward transparency. Thomas Reeve was a victim. Sarah Reeve was a victim. The 17 people who died at Groom Lake were victims. Everyone who's ever been experimented on without consent, transformed without permission, held prisoner without trial, they're all victims, and victims deserve to have their stories told. So, I'm telling it, all of it, the full truth as I know it. And if you're reading this, if you've made it this far, then you're part of the story now too. You have knowledge the government doesn't want you to have. Information they've killed to protect. And you have a choice. Stay silent and safe. Or speak up and risk the consequences. I can't tell you what to do. I can only tell you what I've decided. I've been silent for 3 years. I've carried this weight and let it crush me a little more each day. But I'm done. I'm breaking my silence. I'm speaking truth to power, even though power has bigger guns and longer reach, because Thomas Reeve deserves to be remembered as more than a monster. He deserves to be remembered as a man who endured unimaginable suffering and still retained enough humanity to apologize, to grieve, to love, and ultimately to die free. If you take nothing else from this story, take this. The government is capable of terrible things in the name of security. Scientists are capable of terrible things in the name of progress. And ordinary people are capable of terrible things when they convince themselves they're following orders. But we're also capable of compassion, of resistance, of standing up and saying, "No more, not in my name," not to people who can't defend themselves. Be that person. Be the one who questions authority when authority demands silence. Be the one who speaks for those who can't speak for themselves. Be the one who forces change even when change feels impossible. Because Project Lazarus might be buried. Thomas Reeve might be gone, but the system that created them is still running, still experimenting, still creating new victims. And that will continue until enough people care enough to stop it. I don't know what happens next. Don't know if I'll face legal action. Don't know if I'll be arrested or discredited or simply erased from all records. But I know I won't regret speaking out. Won't regret giving Thomas and Sarah Reeve the memorial they deserve. Won't regret trying to save the 23 people still trapped in similar hells. This is my final statement, my testimony, my truth. Do with it what you will. Believe it or dismiss it, error it, just forget it, and then you will. But before you decide, ask yourself one question. If you were Thomas Reeve, trapped in a body that won't die, tortured for decades in the name of science, wouldn't you want someone to tell your story? Wouldn't you want someone to say, "This happened, this was wrong, and it should never happen again"? I'm that someone. For Thomas, for Sarah, for the 23 names on Torres's list, for every victim of every classified project that treats humans as expendable resources. My name is Marcus Chen. I was a night guard at Area 51. Something escaped on October 23rd, 2018. And now I'm escaping too. Escaping silence. Escaping complicity. Escaping the comfortable lie that my government would never do terrible things to its own people. They would. They did. They still are. And it's time we all stop pretending otherwise. I wasn't arrested, wasn't silenced, wasn't erased. The story went viral. Millions of views in the first week. Media coverage, congressional inquiries, Freedom of Information Act requests flooding government agencies. The official response was predictable. Mr. Chen is a troubled veteran suffering from documented mental health issues. His allegations are unfounded. No such projects exist. But something interesting happened. Other people started coming forward. Other veterans, other scientists, other whistleblowers, each with their own piece of the puzzle, each confirming details I'd mentioned, each adding credibility to the story. The government couldn't discredit all of us, couldn't silence everyone. The dam broke. Information started flooding out. Documents leaked. Photographs surfaced. Video footage appeared, project after project, exposed to sunlight. Last week, Congress held hearings. Under oath, former officials admitted some programs existed, claimed they were shut down decades ago, claimed no active experiments continue. But they admitted the programs were real. Admitted mistakes were made. Admitted victims existed. It's not enough. Not yet. But it's a start. It's progress. It's the first crack in a wall that's held for 70 years. The 23 names on Torres's list, 3 have been located and freed. 17 remain missing. 3 are confirmed dead. The search continues. The fight continues. And I continue with it because Thomas Reeve walked alone through the desert for 4 years seeking peace. I can walk a few more years seeking justice. It's the least I can do, the least any of us can do.